Hey juniors, it's Miss Stewart again. We're going to review subject-verb agreement again this week, and just for the sake of time, don't get too caught up in the fact that I've got a whole lot of notes here, because you can pause and go back and write things down. But for the sake of time, so that this video is not super long, I went ahead and wrote some things down. So to review, what are subjects? Again, subjects, person, place, thing, or idea performing an action or a state of being in a sentence. And if you remember from last Friday, we said state of being was existence. So like if you said, I am here, you are existing in that space of here. To review, what are verbs? The action or state of being performed by the subject. And when we say state of being, we are referring to the verbs like am, is, are, was, were, those types of things. Not an action, but an existence. Last week, I can't remember if I talked about it on my video or if I just talked about it in class. What should we look for first in a sentence when we're trying to make sure our subjects and our verbs are agreeing? What does agreeing mean? Match. Our subjects and verbs match in singular or as plural. So you have a singular subject with a singular verb, a plural subject with a plural verb. So you always want to look for the verb first. And you look for the verb first because then you can ask yourself a simple question to find your subject. So you can ask, who or what is doing the specified action of the sentence? So for example, I've got the sentence, Krista drove the car. So I'm going to look for my verb first. My verb happens to be drove. So now I can ask myself the question, who drove the car? And that would be Krista. Krista drove the car, so Krista has to be my subject. So just some review. New stuff, we're talking about prepositions and prepositional phrases. Because what I noticed, what Mrs. Brubaker noticed, what Mrs. McCormick noticed was that we were getting a little caught up on prepositional phrases. So we just want to go through those and kind of talk about what is a preposition, what's a prepositional phrase, why do they matter? So let's talk about why they matter. Why do we need to know what they are? So prepositional phrases and prepositions can sometimes distract us from what the true subject of a sentence is because they kind of get in between our subject and our verb sometimes. So let's write that down. Why do prepositions and prepositional phrases matter? Because they distract us from the true subject of a sentence. This is something that's going to be key for ACT. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So just remember, you have to know prepositions and prepositional phrases for the ACT. So we've got 3 definitions here for you. A preposition is a word used to express a relationship or proximity in location or time to another word. So these are words like with, to, on, around, etc. You should have a little picture that looks like a squirrel that is made up of 70, I think, common prepositions. So you can use that as a tool. So you can also think about it as prepositions are anything a squirrel can do. They can go up a tree, down a tree. They can be on a tree, on a limb, anything like that. Object of the preposition. Object of the preposition is important because it's a word, noun or pronoun, that follows your preposition. So, with my friend would be a prepositional phrase. With being your preposition, friend being your object of the preposition because it follows after the preposition with. And then prepositional phrases. We have to know how to identify prepositional phrases, where they start and where they stop. So a prepositional phrase starts with the preposition and it ends with the object of the preposition. This will make more sense once we get into looking at some sentences. So again, prepositional phrases start with the preposition, end with the object of the preposition, which is the noun or pronoun that comes right after it. So let's talk about why do prepositional phrases have to screw up my sentences so much? Well, because prepositional phrases, I'm going to abbreviate prep phrases, act in two ways. They act one way, like an adjective, so they can describe nouns. They act in a second way, like an adverb, describing a verb. So this means that they can interrupt or come between the subject and a verb. So literally, right in the middle between a subject and a verb sometimes. How dare they? So, let's look at some simple identification. I think you'll catch on to all of these definitions and things when you see it. So let's look at this first sentence. The man with all the birds live on my street. So, if you look at your directions, you're going to label the subject with an S, verb with a V, a preposition with a P, object of the preposition with an OOP. Yes, I know that spells a dirty word. That's okay. Then we're going to cross out our prepositional phrases because when we're looking for a subject and a verb, we want to ignore any prepositional phrases in a sentence so they no longer distract us. And then we'll adjust the subject or the verb to make our sentence agree. So we have, the man with all the birds live on my street. So I'm going to ask myself, what's the action taking place in this sentence? So I'm going to label live because it's what's being done in this sentence. It is my verb. So now I'm going to look for prepositions. So in this sentence, I have the preposition with, so I'm going to put a P there. I have the preposition on, I'm going to put another P there. And now I'm going to look for my object of the preposition. So I know where each of my prepositional phrases starts, but now I need to know where they end. So with, the next noun that comes after it would be birds. So I'm going to put an OOP there because it is my object of the preposition. So that is where my prepositional phrase ends. So I can cross out from with to birds. And I'm going to ignore that. Now I know I have the preposition on that starts a prepositional phrase. I've got to find my object of the preposition to find out where it ends. So that's the next noun that comes after it. So I have street. So I'm going to label that object of the preposition. My pen will work. There we go. So beginning, end. Cross it out. I don't need it. I don't want that to even confuse me, even though I know it comes after my verb. Another thing that we should be aware of. I know your teachers have probably told you numerous times, don't end a sentence in a preposition. That's because a preposition always has to have an object of the preposition. It cannot be alone. So if you ever wondered why we tell you that, that's why. So now we're left with the man live. So we can go back to our verb live. Who lived? The man. So man has to be my subject. So let's talk singular and plural. Man, singular, it's only one man. Live, there's no S there, so that's got to be plural. So we have a singular subject and a plural verb. So let's change live to lives. So now we're left with the man lives. All right, I want you guys to label 2 and 3. Use your little squirrel sheet to help. I don't have it near me, or I would show you, but that's okay, you'll have it. So I want you to label 2 and 3 and cross out your prepositional phrases. But let's flip over, let's diagram a sentence together. We'll diagram just the same way we did last week, basic diagram. So baseline, subject on the left, vertical line passing through, telling us our predicate starts, and then our verb on the right. That's all we're going to do. So we know, based on the front, that we were left with the man lives from the front. That's what we were left with once we crossed out our prepositional phrases and we fixed our agreement issues. So the is an adjective. I'm going to ignore that. So I'm just going to diagram man lives. So baseline, subject, man, vertical line passing through, indicating the predicate, and then verb lives. I want you guys to diagram 2 and 3. Again, just doing the most basic diagram. Just subject and verb, nothing fancy. But let's kind of review our lesson today. So again, here's your little note, complete numbers 2 and 3 on simple identification and diagramming. You can handle it, I know you can. But just to review, prepositions are important. Why are they important? They distract us. So they distract us from the true subject. There's a little test that knows these prepositions distract us. I'm sure you know what it's called. It's the ACT. So the ACT is banking on the fact that you're going to make a mistake with prepositions. So they're thinking, hey, I can get these guys to choose the wrong answer and show they're not really ready for college by tossing some prepositional phrases in there. But what we know is you guys know the trick about prepositional phrases, so you're not going to fall for it. So you're not going to be distracted. So they'll use prepositional phrases to distract you from the actual answer. You've probably heard this, the distractor, in your set of answer choices. This is where you might see some prepositional phrases. It's not the only thing, but it will trip you up sometimes. So, remember, preposition, anything a squirrel can do. Use your picture. You've got 70 common prepositions there.